I put the cameras of the iPhone 16 Pro against the past 4 generations of iPhones to see what exactly has been improved. And to spice things a little bit, I'm gonna invite you to this blind test so you can choose what you think is the best photo, and then you can see for yourself if the upgrade is actually worth it or not. Let's get into it. I want to start with the bright daylight shots, where all phones can take really good shots. Starting with the ultra wide, and then if we zoom in on the ultra wide, we can see the details and the difference between each phone. The 16 Pro now has a 48 megapixel sensor on the ultra wide camera. And by the way, to actually use the full 48 megapixels, you have to turn on RAW Max. So I took photos in both regular settings and RAW Max, which we'll get into in a second. And if we jump to the tele lenses, here where things get tricky because each phone has a different focal length. I also, for the fun of it, zoomed to the maximum possible on each phone to the top of the tallest building in the world. You can go back and look at them again if you still need time, but here are the results. Of course, I'm gonna keep the results for more time because you asked for it. Now, few things to notice. The 12 and the 13 did really good. The 13 impressively good in this. The colors on the 13 are slightly different than all of the rest of the phones, just like last year. And I kind of like that vibe. Now, jumping to the 15, where it had issues with white balance. Each photo was a different white balance. 15, what's wrong with you? And to put the cherry on top with the 15 Pro, I barely was able to get the top of the building focused because of how it was going back and forth to the window and then to the building, and it didn't know where to focus. The 16 Pro kind of solved that, but not fully. Not as bad as the 15, but I didn't get that with the 14 and the 13 and even the 12. Just something to keep in mind. And now if we jump to the RAW Max, all phones shoot RAW, but the only one that has a 48 megapixel sensor on the ultra wide is the 16 Pro. And then zooming on all of them, we can kind of see the difference in each of them and how some of them are more detailed than others. Also the difference in white balance and colors, the difference in the blues in the skies. And then jumping to the wide lens, only the 14 Pro, 15 Pro, and 16 Pro has a 48 megapixel sensor on these cameras, but still all photos looked really good on all of them. And if we zoom into the windows of the building, we can see kind of the difference in details. Again, if you need more time to check the photos, go back and check them again before I show you the results. But here are the results. I noticed some things in these photos. Just like last year, the 14 Pro felt slightly more detailed and a little bit more sharpened than the 15 Pro in RAW Max. But this year, the 16 Pro looked the most natural and close to life colors. And to test the full potential of the HDR capabilities of each phone, I tried to take some photos of the sunset so we can see how can each phone handle the dark shadows in the foreground and balancing it with the bright highlight, which is the sunlight. All phones did really good actually, but some phones had harder times balancing between the highlights and the shadows. I also took some selfies with the bright sun behind me so we can see how it's going to even out between the skin tones, the sun, the foreground, the background, all the mix. And here's where you can kind of figure out which phone is which. I also took some selfies with me facing the sun this time so we can get the best lighting conditions for each phone and see how crisp each photo is from the front camera. And all of them did really good, but if we zoom in on my beard, we can see the detail differences between each phone. I also took this photo of a sign that has a lot of text in it, so if we zoom in really closely with each photo, we can see the difference in details between all of them. I also took some photos with the ultra wide to see if the HDR capabilities are going to be different on different lenses, and then move to the tele lenses. Here also we can kind of know which one is which by the focal length. But of course, if you need more time to check the photos again, you can go back before I show you the results. But here are the results. I noticed some things as usual. Again, when we have that RAW Max on the 14 Pro and 15 Pro and 16 Pro, the details on the 15 Pro are not the same as the 14 Pro and the 16 Pro. Both the 14 and the 16 are really crisp and nice. And then you move to the 15, it's a little bit soft for some reason. It's been like this since day one. I didn't expect it to change, but you know, I had some hope. Now moving to the low light performance on each phone. I took some indoor shots to a place that is kind of very low light. It may seem like it has a lot of lights in it, but it didn't. I also tried to put a lot of colors here and there, the reds, the yellows, some dark blue as well, some green. And if you zoom into this jukebox and see the details in each phone, I also took a photo of this van so we can see how each phone can balance the bright light inside the van with the darker areas and the dark sky and the very bright lights here and there. Also to test the lens flare. And if we zoom in also on this photo, we can kind of see how each phone is performing depending on how much you can see inside the van itself. Also took this photo of these hanged cars. We have a lot of colors in this photo. It really was much darker than it seems, yet it looks so crisp and bright in some of the phones. If we zoom in, we can kind of see the grainy one, the crisp one. Which one you think is the best? Before I show you the results, you can go back and check if you want. But here are the results. The 13 Pro has different color theme, as I told you before, and we can see it here, the difference in reds. It's a bit brighter, kind of the blues. So every time I would pick up and edit these photos, I would notice and know which phone is the 13 Pro because of the slight difference in these colors. One of the things that I noticed also that the 14 Pro, 15 Pro and 16 Pro didn't really kick in night mode with these photos. Almost as if it's telling me I don't need to. I have good cameras. I have a 48 megapixel sensor. Although I would expect it to do better and have better details if they did, yet still they did take great photos. Just FYI, I'm just pointing and shooting without any extra settings. Of course, you can do extra settings and get even better photos, slightly better photos. So you can turn on night mode if you want. Just something to keep in mind. Now back indoors to my old studio. I took some portrait shots with all the phones, and it's a very well lit environment, of course. And just like last year, all of them did really good, which shows that all phones can do really well in bright environments. I also wanted to do a twist, kind of, and I turned off the lights. I kept only the backlights, and I turned on the flash to see how each phone's flash is gonna affect my skin tone with all these yellow lights. And actually some of them had terrible job at white balancing between the photos. I also took some extremely low light photos with the front camera. All of them this time kicked in night mode, and I'm really impressed by the details. Actually, it was pretty dim. Of course, you can go back and check each photo, pause if you want, take your time before I show you the results, but here are the results. But I also noticed difference in white balance. One is slightly more greenish than the other. But again, you can adjust all of that to whatever you want within the styles. You can edit it later on. I'm talking about the point and shoot. That's it. Also, one more thing I noticed about the camera button, that when you take photos with your thumb in a vertical way, the camera shakes, the whole phone shakes because you're trying to click on the button itself. So I was taking this photo of the sunset with the camera button, took a couple of photos that were so shaky, then I had to go back to the normal way of shooting, which raises the question of, can I actually use it in vertical way or even horizontal, especially at night where night mode is kicking in and I'm clicking on the phone and shaking it. More details in a separate video soon. Now, the last part we're going to be checking today is video. I took two videos, one at the golden hour and the other one is at night. I tried to move and pan with the phones. I tried walking with the phones, moving around, some panning. I was shooting 4K 30 FPS. We can see the difference in the greens, the oranges, the blues, the balancing between the highlights and the shadows. 13 Pro and above were doing really good in such conditions. Even the 12 Pro didn't do a bad job. You can go back and watch them again before I show you the results, but here are the results. The video capabilities of the iPhone in bright environments are really interesting. The best in the market, hands down. They feel so natural. They feel so good. I'm really confident in taking videos on the iPhone. I don't have any doubts that it's gonna look great. Now moving to low light video. I also tried walking with the iPhone, especially at night. It's gonna look a bit more shaky than bright daylight, also moving around, some panning. We had a lot of colors, so we can see the difference between all of them. A lot of light sources as well, so we can see how the lens flare kind of improved over the years. If you still need more time to check the videos, go back and check them again before I show you the results, but here are the results. I actually am very impressed with the videos even at low light. It looks slightly brighter than the actual environment that I was in, but of course you can adjust that in the camera app or even post-production. Tell me which phone you have and which phone you think is the best out of the bunch that you saw today. Is it actually worth upgrading or not? I'll leave that to you because you saw all the photos. Oh, and by the way, did you notice whenever I say subscribe or like buttons, the actual buttons light up within the app or the browser? Rewind, check that again. Press them along the way too. Thank you for watching. See ya. What do you guys think of the new studio, by the way?